It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Dirk, 28 days until the Daytona 500, just 20 days until cars are on the track. Today's show, as always, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced, white-knuckle racing just across the river in Council Bluffs on 23rd Avenue. Get VIP information. Get premium memberships, how-to videos, do's and don'ts at joeskarting.com, karting with a K, or like them on Facebook, Twitter, and your social media feeds. Unfortunately, we got to start off today's show with a little bit of a sad note. Randy Kay, who was a staple in the racing community at I-80 Speedway, Adams County Speedway, and dirt tracks throughout the area, passed away earlier this week. There was a service of remembrance of life yesterday at Glory Days in Council Bluffs. It was great to see people down there kind of sharing stories about Randy. I only met him a couple of times in passing, and he was always very cordial and nice to me. And you know, honestly, to my enjoyment, he always offered me advice to get better as an announcer. He never thought, well, he won't take it or anything. He would say, you know, he would just, why do you do this? And then I'd say, well, you know, and he'd say, well, maybe try it like this. I heard an announcer over at this area do it like that. And as much as I have an ego sometimes too, it was really refreshing to have somebody in a polite way say, try this, rather than, you suck. You know, so I really respected Randy for that. And he did a lot of great things for the racing community, just with being at the dirt track every single week. And he'll be greatly missed this year at I-80 Speedway with the Kaziskis. I know that, and I know Adams County Speedway is. So we wanted to start off with that note. Rest in peace, Randy Kay. You will be missed. You'll be missed greatly by the racing community. All right, in case you were living in a hole and you didn't notice, NASCAR completely flipped the script on us, and they have introduced a new race format. Some key notes to it: there is no longer a chase. It is a playoff system now. And the idea behind that is when they were taking this around to the sponsors and to potential sponsors, and they kept saying the chase, and sponsors, well, what is that? And they said, oh, it's our playoff system. So they just thought, you know what, as catchy as the chase is, as much as it fits racing, it is kind of a nice, cool connotation, let's just call it the playoffs. It's what it is. It's a playoff system.
It is a playoff system. I mean, teams are eliminated. Mm-hmm. Every sport has playoffs, and what happens in the playoffs, teams are eliminated. Right. So that's exactly what NASCAR's got.
So the races are now going to be broken up into 3 stages. The first 2 stages are going to be approximately 30% of the race length. The final stage is going to be approximately 40% of the race length, making up the largest of the 3 portions. The first stage, qualifying is all going to happen. They're going to get the cars out there. They're going to do the first stage. And then when the checkered flag waves for that first stage, whoever wins gets 10. And I did call around and get some clarification on this because I was pretty confused for a couple of days. Whoever wins that gets 10 championship driver points. This is important for you Pick'ems contest fans and participants. Second place gets 9. Third place gets 8. On back to 10th.
Down to 1 point for 10th.
For 1 point. If you win that segment, you get 1 playoff bonus point. That is not a championship driver point. It is a bonus point. So then you come back, then they will, and actually I should back up just a little bit. 5 laps before the checkered flag waves for segment number 1, or for stage number 1, they're going to close pit road. If there's an accident, I'm sure they'll open up pit road and try to decide what they're going to do then. Cars will come down pit road after stage number 1 is complete. They will make the necessary changes. This will be a regular yellow flag stop. And so any changes on pit road will be reflective as the restart for stage number 2. And they will also take the opportunity for TV and radio to take a commercial break. So that way, this is an opportunity. I'm going to have less to complain about for Fox when they cut away just as we're getting a battle for the lead, because Fox now has predetermined times that they can take commercial breaks. So this allows the broadcast partners to be able to line up their commercial breaks a lot better. They can sell segment sponsors. They can sell this different stuff, these stage sponsors. So this offers the broadcast partners a lot more opportunities. There will be no delay. There'll be no getting out of the car. There'll be no doing this stuff. They're going to make their pit stops, come back out on the track. They're going to line them back up according to how they came off and according to who decided to stay out, and they're going to run stage number 2. Stage number 2 is the same as stage 1.
Now, I was under the assumption, from what I understood, is it was a mandatory pit stop. Now, you could go in and just take 2 right side tires and a can of gas and come right back out, but you weren't allowed to just stay out.
Because I have no life, and I'm apparently not a very good salesman right now, I went back and watched that press conference 3 or 4 times. I heard them specifically say that you can choose to stay out, but you cannot come to pit road because they're going to lock pit road with 5 to go before that segment ends, right? So it is my understanding that pit stop is optional. Stage number 2 is exactly like stage number 1. They're going to run 30% of the race length, and then whoever's first wins 10 championship driver points and 1 playoff bonus point. Second doesn't get any bonus points. They get championship driver points, and then they'll come down pit road again. They'll take commercial breaks. They'll come back. They'll interview drivers, talk about all that fun stuff. Then they'll come out and run the final segment. And after the race is over with, then it's 40th through 1st. We'll get all your points all divvied up just the exact same. Some of the changes, no more bonus points for leading a lap or leading the most laps. You now get playoff bonus points for winning the race, and it's 5. And this is a really key thing. So the first 26 races of the season, there's now going to be a regular season champion who's now going to get crowned an additional 15 bonus playoff points. And I think this part of it I really like, that the playoff points, the bonus playoff points that you acquire throughout the season will now carry through to the round of 8. Remember, all bonus points that were accumulated were eliminated after the round of 16. Going into the round of 12, everyone's even Steven now. They're all at 3,000 points. Nobody's got 3,006 for having 2 wins on the season. It's all even Steven. Now, through the round of 8, it's all going to be bonus points. Going into Championship Sunday at Homestead Miami Speedway, this new stage format and the bonus points and all that stuff is scraped. It is a full normal race.
4 cars.
4 champions, or 4 drivers, 4 potential champions. Whoever finishes the best wins the race.
Wins the title.
Correct. Wins the title. I think that a lot of people are having some issues with understanding this, but the good thing that I'm starting to hear as it's been digested for a while is that this really is going to add, this theoretically is going to add to some better racing on the track.
Well, it should. I'm interested to see a lot of the little things like, do they have a set number of laps they're going to do between stages? Is it going to be 3 laps? Is it going to be 5 laps? Is it going to be a time limit thing? Are the yellow laps that are there going to count towards race laps? So many things in there.
I tell you what, I've got answers to all of those. Let's take a break. We'll come back in turn number 2. We'll answer all your questions. Still to come on today's show, the Legends of the Dirt Series. Mike Nichols, driver in the number 63 IMCA stock car for Home Pride Motorsports, will join us for this weekend's Legends of the Dirt Series. But again, first in turn number 2, when we come back here on the front stretch, we will continue to talk about the new race format for the NASCAR Cup Series, the Monster Energy Cup Series, here on the front stretch.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Heading into turn number 2, brought to you by Quaker Steak and Lube in Council Bluffs. Dirk, next Sunday, the Super Bowl will be it. Make sure to get over to Quaker Steak and Lube next Sunday for the big game. 5 to 9 o'clock, that's your specials. Full bucket of wings for $27.95. You can add a domestic lube too for additional $12. Or you can get a compact bucket of wings. This is my favorite special, by the way. You can get a compact bucket of wings, which is plenty of wings, by the way. And you can get a lube tube, which, depending on my mood, is plenty of beer, for $28.95. So about 100 ounces of beer and I believe 20 wings is a compact bucket. So that's good for 2. That's been usually my girlfriend and I, whenever we go over there, we'll get a compact bucket of wings and a lube tube for $28.95. We'll upgrade because I don't like the domestic beers. I like Blue Moons and Sam Adams and Angry Orchard, so we'll upgrade for that, and we'll enjoy ourselves a lovely day. Luberitas for $4, Bloody Marys for $4, $1 off domestics. And again, that's 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock on Sunday, February 5th for Super Bowl Sunday. Get over to Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch.
Don't mess up your kitchen. Just go eat the wings.
Exactly. Dirk, you had some questions that I think I have the answers to, which just makes me feel so weird that you have a question I have the answer to.
Well, I didn't have the patience to watch the whole thing 4 times. You know,
I appreciate you saying patience.
I watched the gist of it, and said, well, okay, they're making changes. And I don't care, it doesn't matter what we think, I've been around the sport a long time. You're fairly new to it, but it doesn't matter what we think. These are the changes. This is what's going to happen. I'm glad they started it for the beginning of the season and didn't wait until May or August or whenever to implement it.
One of your questions was, will the caution flags lap count between segments?
Right.
That question was specifically asked. I can't remember if it was during the press conference or if it was on Sirius XM. I've been listening a lot to Dave Moody this week because his show this week has just been ask, I'll answer, because he understands the format. He's been with NASCAR. He's asked every question there. To his understanding and to my understanding, yes, the laps are going to count, but it's not going to be like a 10-lap caution. They're going to do their best to commercial break, probably 2-3 minute commercial break, which equates to about 2 laps on the track, maybe 3 laps on the track, and then they're going to come back, do some interviews, green flag. And so, yes, the caution laps are going to count between segments. There's been a lot of talk on social media, and you and I talked about it when we first sat down in the studio this morning. The haters they all came out of the woodwork.
Oh, exactly.
And they came out from every rock, and they took every opportunity to take shots at NASCAR. And, I've actually been very refreshed. The last 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, it's been really tough to be on social media because it's just between the politics, the hate, it's been way too much. And I've actually stopped getting on my Dan Taylor account because it's just overloaded. Now I'm just restricted to my private account, the people I want to see, the things I want to see. I've narrowed my vision a lot. But the last couple of days, so when they made the announcement, the next 2 days, the haters were all over social media. NASCAR's, this is gimmicky, this is terrible, yada, yada, yada. But now all of the sensible people and even some of the haters are starting to get turned around. NASCAR, I applaud them because this was a bold change. I mean, they've got an opportunity here to really look like fools.
They are trying to improve their product.
Exactly.
They're trying, at least, people. They're not sitting there on their thumbs, you people that are on there, I haven't watched a race in 4 years. Then what do you care what the point system is?
Exactly.
Stay that way. Don't watch anymore.
Exactly.
The races are still going on, whether you're watching them or not. Just as the races are going to happen, whether they agree with what Dan and I say or not, or, you guys ought to try this. The silliest one I saw was the guy that come on and says, this is why Carl Edwards quit racing. He heard about the points rule change.
I knew that was going to happen, too. By the way, later articles said that the reason why Carl left was because he's going to be a senator.
Yeah, they say he's going to run for Senate and against some Claire lady for his state in Missouri.
But it seems like everyone is now shifting in the direction of at least NASCAR's trying something, because I think there was a unanimous kind of rumbling amongst the fans was that the beginning of races were always fun, the restarts were always great to watch, and the end of the races were usually fun. But there was always that lull, and it usually lasted for about a green flag run, maybe 2, sometimes 3. That there was just, the cars were spread out. There was nothing to do. And it's not NASCAR's fault that there's not as many cautions as there was 10 or 15 years ago. Frankly, I blame the manufacturers for making too good of equipment. They build these things now with the technology and the know-how that they can last the entire races. They're not blowing engines. Goodyear's done their math and done their homework and brought a quality most of the time. Don't give me that look. Most of the time.
Oh, what went through my mind when you said blowing engines was Martin Truex and Brad Keselowski at Talladega, because that's what I was going to mention. You talked about the effect on the races. What about the chase effect at Talladega this year when you had the top 3 or 4 guys in the chase standings just went to the back and rode around?
And again, I wonder how much that played into it, because that really took a lot of the excitement out of Talladega. The Joe Gibbs Racing guys, you don't fault them. You may not like it. You can't. I can't remember who said it, but you can't fault them for a winning strategy, and it worked.
Yeah.
Jimmy Johnson has done it year in and year out at the super speedways. He'll go and hang out at the back for 3/4 of the race, and then he'll start to make his way to the front because he knows that there's a good chance that first 80% of the race or 90% of the race, there's going to be a big wreck, and he doesn't want to be caught up in it. But here's the important thing. These drivers, when they start pushing for stage wins and for race wins, they're going to be rewarded if they're successful. And it's a reward that's going to carry them through to the round of 8 and into that round. So I do believe that this is going to add a little bit more excitement. And for any of you out there that are just saying, I can't watch NASCAR anymore, I can't watch this too gimmicky, yada, yada, at least it's not boring anymore.
Well, I did watch that part of the news conference when they interviewed Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski. I mean, both guys said, you can't take a lap off anymore.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Denny had the best quote of the day, I think, and those drivers all had great ways of putting it. As Denny said, you don't have to know how your watch works. You just have to tell time.
Yep.
And that's absolutely right. Honestly, you can sit back and say, forget about the points. I don't care, because you know what? The broadcast partners are going to do a fantastic job of explaining this to you. Fox, I say that
well,
with a
NBC will halfway through the year.
MRN and PRN, they're going to do a great job of explaining to you who's got what and how many points. And then, Dirk, can you imagine going to Richmond, race number 26, all the bubble guys, and how much that's going to be so chaotic?
I honestly think it's going to be about the same as what it's always been at that point. You're going to have 4 or 5 guys, that are still racing for points, because there's going to be like 12 or 13 different winners, just like there always is.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have like 3 spots coming down to the points, and there's going to be 4 or 5 guys to race for those 3 spots. Yep. Always has been, always will be. I don't think this new point system is going to separate, but it may separate it enough. But now that you can win 60 points at a race, that's a race and a half that you can make up at one race.
Right.
So
40 points for winning the race, 20 points for winning the 2 different segments, 10 each. And then again, the playoff bonus points, 5 for winning the race, and then 1 for winning each of the stages. You'll also get 15 bonus playoff points if you win the regular season championship, which is going to be huge. I mean, that's going to be massive alone, because that's 3 race wins, or that's 15 stage wins that you could make up if you win the regular season points championship.
And I mean, now there'll be guys wanting to win that race, even though their Eagles always wanted them to before.
Mm-hmm.
There was times where, like Denny Hamlin said, we might have been in an experimental phase because we won Daytona.
Right.
So we're in the chase.
Yeah.
Well,
and
now we're still in the chase, but where are we going to line up in the chase? So
Yep.
to win that season championship is going to mean something. And if you got 3 guys sitting there with 3 wins apiece, as they're coming down to Richmond, it might be a deal where that 15 points is really going to mean something.
Absolutely. All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 3. We'll sit down with the driver of the number 63 IMCA stock car, Mike Nichols, driver for Home Pride Motorsports. We'll talk to Mike about his career, his getting into racing, his winning IMCA championships, his national championships, all the great stuff.
Incredible past season for the guy.
Awesome. It's one of a kind, but maybe he can do it again. We'll have to just wait and see for the 2017 season. We'll be back here on the Front Stretch.
There is no such thing as an off-season at Joe's Karting. No matter how cold it is outside or how much snow is on the ground, you'll always be warm and dry inside at Joe's Karting, the Metro's largest indoor karting track. Located in Council Bluffs on 23rd Avenue next to AMC Theater. Find Joe's Karting on Facebook or head to joeskarting.com for hours, pricing, and a schedule of booked parties. That's joeskarting.com. Karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's Karting today and find out what all your friends already know.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the Front Stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the Front Stretch.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch, heading into turn number 3, and it's time to talk to our Legends of the Dirt series, and a guy that this year, the 2016 season, put on quite a show for a lot of fans in the Crawford County, Shelby County, and a little bit of the the I-80 Speedway area. Driver the number 63 Home Pride Motorsports stock car, that is Mike Nichols. How you doing, Mike?
Doing really well, thank you.
It's good to finally get a hold of you. I know your cell phone was giving us troubles, the airlines were giving us troubles, the weather, and then you just dipped into that black hole that is Vegas, and I wasn't even going to get anywhere close to that.
Yep, but now we get to talk, so I appreciate you sticking with it so we can finally do this deal.
Well, we had a lot of people that were asking to have you on for the Legends of the Dirt series, and it's kind of nice because we tend to focus a lot on late models, sprint cars, A-mod drivers. We don't get to talk a lot with legendary stock car drivers, and As neutral as I try to be as an announcer, I do love watching the stock cars and hobby stocks. I think it most of the divisions comes down to the driver, because the cars are all kind of set up similar. There's not a lot of adjustments you can make on these cars, so it really does come down to the driver.
Well, it's a shame your listeners have been deprived for so long, but hopefully it'll go well, and you can talk with a lot of other stock car guys as well. It's always been my favorite class to watch and to participate in. So not that to take anything away from the other classes
Right.
that you mentioned, definitely biased towards the stock car class.
Well, the list of things that our listeners have been deprived of is long, and we don't have time for it on this radio show. So let's talk about how this dirt racing thing got kicked off for you. Were you one of those fans in the stands, or did you get exposed because of your family?
Well, kind of a little bit of both. Like we talked prior to being on air, my dad did race, but it was years and years ago before I was even a twinkle in his eye. And then kind of as a youngster, my dad took me to the races every Friday, Saturday night, whether it be at the races in Harlan or the races in Denison, Iowa. But it was, primarily just locally. And then we got involved doing a go-kart thing, a little bit later, because it was something that I wanted to participate in.
A lot of these guys go from being the fans to crewmen on a team, and then eventually get their own car. Were you ever a crewman for somebody?
No, I pretty much just went on to doing it for myself. As a fan in the stands, there were certain guys that you watched and I guess they were kind of your heroes, so to speak. And I can still remember watching a guy by the name of Bud Pash, Dale Bud Pash, and Dave Holsebus were two of my favorites years and years ago. And kind of when I was doing the go-kart thing, and even before that, my dad used to do some tractor pull stuff, and he tractor pulled with Dave's dad, Dean. And so that's how we got to know Dave. And then we got to know Bud through the go-karting thing. When I started go-karting, Bud was the flag man. So Bud actually really taught me how to race. And he had a significant impact, on my passion for the sport, before I even got going in the cars.
Were you kind of a gearhead to get started?
No, really, I didn't know anything about any sort of mechanics involved, whatsoever. And it's kind of just been a learn as you go thing. My dad isn't, he was a salesman by trade. I've kind of followed along the same path as him. And so we didn't really have a mechanical background. It's been kind of just learning as we go. So, over the course of several years, all the mistakes that we've made or whatever have cost us a lot of money. But I think it's worked out.
Oh man, I can only imagine, because I think I'm kind of like you, to where I know just enough about cars to be dangerous, but I've also gotten myself into pickles where I thought, oh my God, this is going to cost me so much money to fix.
It's amazing the things that have changed over the years. When I first started racing, for the guys to get involved, I mean, that was pretty much your only recourse in doing things was you had to go out and do it yourself. And whether it be stripping a body down, to put new skins on your race car, building engines yourself. We dealt with the IMCA claim back when it was a cash claim. Things have really changed where nowadays it seems like there's a lot of guys that have gotten, involved, some new and some as further generations, but to where racing has evolved to the point where you can kind of just buy your way, so to speak, to have some of these things done. And so that's the part, that's one of the changes in racing that I would say I miss the most and I regret seeing the most, is just because the youngsters of today don't really get a chance to have that do-it-yourself experience. And that's really where I felt that I, learned the most over the years, and that has helped me, to become what I am today.
Well, it's pretty tough because, kids back in the 70s could go out and work on the car in the driveway, and then it could translate to a race car. Now, I mean, you got to have a structural engineering degree, a computer programming background to work on these cars. They become so sophisticated that the everyday person can't relate to them.
Very true. The racing stuff is still about as simple, as it can. But just learning the mechanics of what we have, we don't have any computers involved, at least in today's form of the racing that we're doing.
Give it time.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing going to come eventually, and the little computer geeks or whatever, and the 4-year-olds that we would ask to show us how to download an app on our cell phone or something like that. People that are cheating our computers, on the race car 10 and 15 years from now.
Bill Gates said it best. He said, "Never make fun of a computer geek because you're going to need him someday."
Yep.
Or work for him.
Yeah, or work for him. Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're one of the rare type of race car drivers in the fact that you didn't grow up and crew on somebody's car and come through it that way. But like you said, you don't have the mechanical background, so that probably didn't really interest you.
Yeah, I mean, what interested me the most was competition. I've always been really, really competitive. Anybody that knows me is, it doesn't matter what we would be involved in, but somehow we would make a competition out of it. I mean, even with some of my crew guys or whatever, and we can just drive down the road and find games to make up to where, we can compete. But it was a competition that really got me involved in the mechanics. And, it became common knowledge very shortly into my racing career that knowing how to do the mechanics and knowing how everything worked was definitely going to pay off in more ways than one.
Take me back to the kart racing dates. What did you graduate up to when you got out of the karts?
Well, when I first started getting involved in karts, my dad was a traveling salesman, as I mentioned, and Dad was gone basically Monday through Friday every week. And I'm the youngest of 4 kids. And 7 years in between me and my next oldest sibling, and so I was kind of like an only child, so to speak. So what my mom feared was that I was not going to have a real relationship with my dad, being that I was it was just on the weekends, and then as you get older through adolescence, you almost get to the phase where then you're out into different activities on the weekends. So in order to try to still maintain a relationship with my dad, my mom wanted us to get out and do something together. And what that turned out to be was me spending my paper route money and money that I had saved, through my younger years to go out and buy this go-kart so we could do the go-karting thing on the weekend. And that's how we got started. And I was about, 11 or 12 years old when I got started doing that. And it got to the point where I was not the lightest kid in the world, and I learned a competitive advantage certainly through go-karting is lighter is better. So where I was considerably heavier than the other kids, I thought, when I turned 16, it was only natural for us to go into cars. So we sold all of our go-kart stuff and then moved into the cars basically right as soon as I could when I was 16. Back then, you had to be 16. You couldn't get involved at 14. Otherwise, I got involved at 14.
Yeah.
But, the bad part for Dad is that's when his pocketbook first got opened up into doing some of the racing stuff. So Dad spent, a lot of time and money, and he saw that I had, a little bit of natural ability. So he wanted to see me be successful, and he really kept pushing me through a lot of the years when, would have been a lot easier to do something else. But we, eventually moved from what they had in outlaw hobby stock here locally. Tom Gutowski was our local promoter, and then we had Howard Mellinger was the promoter in Denison.
Mm-hmm.
And so we raced both of those tracks through the outlaw hobby stock, and then Tom Gutowski first brought the IMCA sanction over into Western Iowa in roughly the mid '90s, and our we had kind of a slow adaptation into the IMCA stock car class. And then in 1998, I purchased my first IMCA stock car. It was a Terminator chassis from Mark Elliott in Webster City. And we ran it for a few years. And then in 2000, we got involved with a fellow by the name of Charlie Summers, who had been a longtime friend, but he owned cars here locally that he had guys drive for him. And Charlie and I and my dad, partnered up to where I could drive his IMCA modified. And basically we owned the car and he did the engines, and we did that for a couple of years. And then in 2002, we decided that we wanted to get back into the stock car as well. So actually in 2002, we did a little bit of double duty, stock cars and modified, but did the stock cars a lot. And actually that resulted in our first national championship. And then, as you say, the rest is history from there.
Did you just not enjoy the mods as much as you like the stock cars, or was it just a little too expensive for what you were getting out of it?
I absolutely enjoyed it. Right about that same time, the 4-link suspension was kind of trickling down from the late models, and more or less took over the modified ranks. And the modifieds were, up to that point, the Dirtworks and the Harris were the primary chassis names. And if you didn't have a Dirtworks or Harris, a lot of the guys were in homemade cars. But the Dirtworks DW5, 6, and 7. The last car I owned was a DW8. So just to give you an idea, it was a DW8, and it had a straight 2-link suspension on the back. But it was to the point where we knew that we didn't know anything about 4-link suspension. You didn't have any type of classes you could attend or whatever. A lot of the stuff was based on theory back then. It just became apparent between that and Charlie didn't have the biggest budget in the world for engines. So the stock car was just a better fit for our financials.
So it was kind of, okay, so you did end up having fun in it, but it was kind of like, it felt like it was a good time to maybe get back into the stock cars.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, modifieds was a blast. And, when you ask a 20-year-old kid, hey, do you want to get in a car that'll go faster? I mean, so obviously the answer was yes. And got in it. I mean, I still remember the first time going down the straightaway in a modified that, I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. But in order to go faster, obviously you spend more money. So yeah, ultimately it was the money that got us back out of it.
Well, and back then, I mean, 5 years either way of 2000, basically if you won a modified feature, and I don't care what track you were at, you lost your motor.
Yes. And we did lose some engines. In the, 3 years that I raced a modified, I think we picked up like 7 or 8 wins or something like that, and lost a couple of Charlie's engines. So of course that makes you a little gun shy about putting money into engines. And like I said, Charlie was definitely on a budget as well. So it just, it wasn't really working for either one of us to be competitive, at least not to the point where I felt like I wanted to be.
Yeah, and back then, what was the claim, about $325 or something like that? I mean, that didn't really pay for much more than a gasket set.
Yeah, right about that time is when they started upping the claim amount. When I first started, it was $325, and then I think it went to $375, and then it went from $375 to $525. So I think it spent a year or two at $375, and then they upped it a little bit more. And I can still remember the words out of Brett Root's mouth that IMCA will never, ever, ever have an exchange claim.
I remember that too.
Every time that conversation comes up with him and I have to remember that guys in his shoes should never use the word never, because never is a long time.
And you start to see that more and more. You see it a lot nowadays with the politics, where these politicians will never say never, because You never know what happens. I mean, anything could change, and all of a sudden, never became. It's happening.
Yeah. Never's here. Pigs are flying. Hell's freezing over.
Yeah.
In the history books, they say that you can, throughout war and times that, you can kill men, but you can never kill an idea.
Truth.
Amen. We're talking with Mike Nichols, driver of the number 63 stock car for the IMCA stock car races as a part of Home Pride Motorsports. We're going to take a break. We'll let Mike catch his breath. We'll come back in turn number 4, and we'll start talking about all this winning he's doing and how it's just not fair to anybody else.
Fantastic season.
We'll be back here on the Front Stretch.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100 plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4 on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch, heading into turn number 4. Just about ready to wrap this show up for this beautiful Sunday in the Midwest. A couple more weeks till the Daytona 500, but before we get to all that, we're continuing our Legends of the Dirt series. Driver of the number 63 IMCA stock car, that's Mike Nichols. Mike, talk to me about when you kind of started to feel like you were really becoming a part of that car. Was it early on, or was there a long transitional period where it took you a while to get used to the stock car?
As far as like the stock car itself or racing in general?
Let's go with the stock car.
Okay. The stock car, the turning point in my career was, I had mentioned that we had run the IMCA Modified there in 2000 through 2002. It was 2001 where we still had our Terminator car that we had bought in 1998. And more or less, we just kind of ran some specials or whatever. And we had run, IMCA had just switched carburetor rules. And instead of having a fully open carburetor rule, they switched to this 350 CFM poly. At the time, it really evened up the competition. The motors were, kind of getting to the out of hand point, which they all do eventually. But it was time for the rules to just kind of throw a little curveball at it. And so when that rule got introduced, we thought we'd run some of the some local IMCA stuff and kind of just for fun. But anyway, we towards the fall, Dad and I decided to go down to the Southern Challenge, which was a race in Abilene, Texas. It was a 2,000 to win race, and there was just 5 cars from the Midwest, or 5 cars from Iowa that ventured down. 5, actually, it was just 4 of us, I guess. But it was Jeff Anderson, Brian Blessington, and Dave Baugh. And so at the time, those were 3 very well-established racers. Jeff had just won his 5th national championship in a row in the IMCA. But we went down there and, right from the start of the race, through practice and then through qualifying, we had a really fast car. We just went down there really with a for sale sign on the car, wanting to sell it. We ended up winning the race, and that kind of just put a little bit of spark and confidence, in our minds to where, maybe we ought to try to run the stock car a little bit more consistently. So that's why we ended up partnering with Clay Christian out of Avoca, who built the Thunder chassis, and we had one of the first cars that Clay built, and that's what we started with in 2002. And then ran the stock cars full time in 2002. Like I said, and the confidence from 2001 was still kind of spilling over. And then we raced Jeff door to door and several nights a week, and trying to beat him for the national deal. And then we ended up doing so. Kind of just gave me the confidence, from there forward. There'd been other guys that had tried to knock Jeff off the pedestal or whatever, and after he'd won 5 in a row, we were the ones to do so. So I felt really, really privileged to be in that spot.
What was the big difference between the Thunder chassis and the Terminator?
Well, at the time, it was really just age. We had actually, when we came back from Abilene, we ordered a car and rear end and such from from Mark again, and it was going to be such a long time to get it. And then we talked with Clay, and he was, just 10 miles from our house. And Clay has always been friends, and he kind of wanted to just get into building cars. And he thought that would be something good, in our discussions that, as we were out and about and trying to race a lot, that would be, a good time or a good situation for him to get his name out there. And it did. I mean, it worked well for both of us. But, ultimately we called Mark, and he was very good. He ended up giving us our deposit money back, and then we invested with Clay, and because he was local. But Clay is he's one of those guys that he's an engineer, whether or not he's got a full engineering degree or whatnot. He's just the way he thinks, and he's as meticulous as you get, and he's the guy that you wanted to do your car. So he wasn't really proven at building cars back then, but he proved himself along the way for sure.
Over the last 10 years, as you've won IMCA national championships, countless feature events, has there been a common rival, and not necessarily like a dirty rival or in a bad term, but just somebody that has constantly pushed you and fought for victory lane?
Well, in the stock car, when I first got involved in the IMCA stock car, there was two guys, really. It was Jeff Anderson and Brian Blessington. Jeff has since kind of retired, from doing the stock car stuff, but Brian I still race with all the time, and we've become good friends over the years. But, those two, you knew just from their successes, not only locally, but nationally and kind of all over the Midwest. They used to have a traveling series for the stock cars, and those two guys could win anywhere. So you knew any given night, if you could run with those guys, literally you could put your car on the trailer and you could go anywhere and compete.
You won your 6th national title this year. When you started out in the stock cars, and even after winning a couple, did you ever think you would get to 6?
I never thought I'd get to 1. When I hit 1, I don't even know if I could count to 6. But I still remember being stuck on 4 for so long that I was going to be in Jeff Gordon's shoes, that that drive for 5 or whatever. I didn't ever think 5 come around, where it seemed, like it was, you could just put yourself in a certain position and then hopefully things happen. But, IMCA's kind of changed the rules over the years. There might be some rules because of the way racers, interpret and participate with certain rules. And pertaining to the point system, they've tried to make it to where, I guess it's subjective on whose opinion it is, but in my opinion, it's more of they can kind of choose where championships come from. It was for years and years, it was whoever won the most races. And in my opinion, that's the way the rules still should be. But then they kind of added these bonus points, which are based on how many cars you race against. But in order to get those bonus points, first you have to win track championships. So when you go out and you win races and you win track championships, then you have to rely on guys showing up. And so it became something that you were in control of to something that you had no control over. And that's, kind of the way the racing has evolved, and, in the IMCA, at least as far as the points chasers are concerned.
The rule got changed because there for a while, I know the stock car class almost looked like it was going to die out for several years. I mean, I remember going to races and seeing 5 or 6 cars, but we've seen that in every class. It's happened in the hobby stocks. It's happened in late models, modifieds, whatever. But I can see where I wouldn't think it was fair if I was to win a national title and I raced and won a lot of races beating 6 or 7 cars. As a racer, you're still winning, which is what you go to do. Like I said, you can't control how many guys show up. But if you were sitting there and you were racing against a 20-car field all the time and, we're winning every third week or whatever, I think you'd be a better candidate for a national title than somebody that won every week against 5 cars.
I understand what you're saying, but, a rule had already been implemented at that time was that in order to get maximum points on any given night, you had to have a minimum of 10 cars compete.
Okay.
With IMCA's lineup procedure, even with 10 cars, let's just say hypothetically that 10 cars showed up, the local track's going to line you up with 2 heat races, and thus the high points guy is still going to start in the back. So you're still starting in the 5th row outside, and it doesn't matter if there's if there's 2 heats and there's 10 cars, or there's 2 heats and there's 18 cars, basically you're still, once you make that invert, you're still going to start 10th, as the high guy. So, so I understand what you're saying, but at the time and since then, I don't necessarily feel like it's the perfect answer. I mean, is there a time and a place for it? Yeah. But the maximum bonus point deal of 20 cars per track, I don't feel is right, because as our racing has progressed in every class, I mean, 20 average for the season in any class is pretty rare. Years ago, you might have run against, 30, 35 cars in one class, but now to find 20 is pretty rare. So therefore, you have certain places of the country that definitely have more of an advantage, I would say, than other parts. So in my opinion, that rule, even if they wanted to keep the same format, should be on like a national average. So if the national average is, say, 15, then 15 should be your maximum amount of bonus points that you can get per track.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's just my opinion, but I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying. Racing against 5 cars or versus 20, it shouldn't be rewarded the same. So I certainly understand that.
And again, like you said, it's something you can't control, but your idea does have some merit.
We've been talking with the 63 of Mike Nichols. Mike, got a couple more topics I want to run by you before we wrap up today's Legends of the Dirt series. How many wins did you end up getting on the season officially, and how many IMCA feature wins?
We ended up with 62 on the year, and it's still crazy for me to even think about. Even it's, now it's the following year, and we have to start over again. But 54 officially was the IMCA tally, but they just count through the end of the point season, which is the end of September. Mm-hmm. So there was a few IMCA races in after that. So basically, the official tally was 54.
Did you end up getting the single season record, or did you tie it?
It was tied with a fellow by the name of Nate Koopman. He runs a sport compact, and he had another a couple years ago that was real phenomenal, where he won practically everything that there was to win.
Is that something that you're setting out this year to say, okay, I got close to it last year, I want to set it this year?
No, I don't think anybody in their right mind could reasonably expect to go out and race for that sort of thing. It's literally something that has to kind of fall in your lap. I don't think you could, in reality, have that kind of goal at the beginning of the year to say, hey, I'm going to go out and win 50-plus races in, or 62 races in 77 starts. I don't think that you could ever seek out and try to top that. My goals, literally start with number one is to have fun. Here's the last few years, our goals have changed to instead of the racing in general, we really want to try to support our local tracks, meaning the tracks closest to home as much as we can. But, having fun, supporting our local tracks. And then if we can put ourselves in position to maybe win a national championship, if things were to go right, then we will do that as well.
I had one of them that I was really impressed with you this year, and maybe you tell me how hard it's been to do this, but you mentioned it early on that, you were a bigger kid growing up, and that kind of forced you up into the stock cars. And when I first started watching you race, you were a bigger guy, and now, I think you can proudly say you're about half the man you used to be.
Well, not quite half, but it's more than half, but no, I lost quite a bit of weight, and that has been quite the accomplishment too. It's one that I'm more proud of. As racing evolves and you change technology and things that change on your car here and there, it's tough to be fast year after year after year after year. It's just like having all those cars at the racetrack. I mean, you think it's going to last forever when you're in that moment, but in reality, it's not going to. So when I did lose all the weight, it was definitely a concern to wonder if you're still going to be able to go fast. And we have been able to still translate our same setups and make some changes and actually improve ourselves, after losing the weight. So that's been, something that I'm real proud of to see over the past couple of years, to where we've actually improved even after losing the weight. So it's been good.
What was the catalyst to you losing the weight?
Eating a lot of protein. So basically cutting out a lot of carbs. Mm-hmm. One of the carbs I've never been able to get rid of completely is adult beverages. But
beer and pizza is my Achilles heel. I mean, if I could get rid of that, I'd finally drop the gut that I've had for 10 years. But yeah.
Yeah, it's so I can't get rid of everything, but definitely eating a lot of protein or whatever. It's amazing how much weight starts dropping off when you do that.
Why did you decide to lose it, though? Was it a competitive thing, or was there, like, health scares, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, absolutely. It had nothing to do with racing. It was, as you just look at other people that have health issues in regards to their weight, you know, I mean, I'm ashamed to admit that I was over 400 pounds. And guys that were that heavy, you know, the big health risk starts in your late 30s, and I was getting to the point where I was 35 years old, and you know, and that heavy. I want to be healthy, and I want to be around for a while. So ultimately, I made the choice of being healthy, and you know, choosing to be around and live for a while, and doing those things before my health risks or before my health deteriorated any worse than what it was already.
Well, that's great to hear, man. We've taken a lot of your time. Proud of you that you're able to lose that weight. We do like seeing you around. I know you got a lot of fans that want to see you racing for another 20 or 30 years. So we're really glad you were able to accomplish that. Big accomplishment on the national championships. And this year, let's set out this year. You're going to win that Boone Super Nationals.
Oh, you know, when I was a kid.
That's just downright mean, Dan. That's just downright mean.
I used to watch Dale Earnhardt, and not that I am anywhere close to being a Dale Earnhardt, but when it was NASCAR and NASCAR was NASCAR, Dale Earnhardt was the man, and to see him never win a Daytona 500 was just it was criminal almost. Mm-hmm. After Sam Reed and boy, you know, the only way I can compare it is that where you know, we've led somewhere like 100 laps of that race lifetime. I mean, it's a 30-lap race or whatever, so leading 100 laps and have never won the damn thing. And now I've finished second 2 years in a row. If I never win it, I hope that someday when I'm old and in the retirement home and telling stories that the rest of my accomplishments speak for themselves. But certainly that's one that you definitely want to add to on your trophy mantle.
Well, Dan just wants to see you win it so he can see you move up to late models and see you give those a try.
Well, Dan is absolutely welcome to write a check. And
I thought that's what Luke was for.
My checks are rubber. You don't want my checks.
I thought that's what Luke was for.
Yeah, well, you know, he's been fantastic and has been a great compliment to our racing. You know, but we've got so many good sponsors that make our car go. But you know, eventually that is something that I like to do is run the late model. So we'll see what time. You know, what holds for us in the future.
Well, you mentioned those sponsors. Go ahead and give us a shameless plug or two.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to do so. As you mentioned, Home Pride Motorsport with Luke Cochran has been a huge help. My B&B chassis that I'm in right now is second to none. EQ cylinder heads, Champion Oil, Mosier Engineering, Bassett Racing Wheel, KS Engineering. Kevin Stoa builds the best engine power plant out there. VP Racing Fuel, Heartland. Bilstein Shocks, Peterson Motors of Harlan, The Joy of Seating, Dots' DJ Service, Stephenville Starter and Electric, Comp Cams, Carrillo Pistons and Rods, FX Suspension, Wade Cross, Horsepower Dynamics, Archie's Barbecue, The Lounge of Harlan, Pizza Ranch of Harlan and Denison. And you're not cutting me off yet, so I'm going to keep going.
No, you're talking Archie's Barbecue, you're talking Pizza Ranch. I'm getting hungry.
We're waiting for the bars where we go drink and eat pizza.
Exactly. Mi Casa family restaurant in Harlan, Dirt Defender, Dynamic Drivelines, Race Logic Chassis School, VDL Carburation, Schoenfeld Headers, Performance Bodies, iBox Springs, 6-9 Designs, and there's a few more, the Rust family out of Harlan. Everybody that helps me, my crew guys, my wife, Anita, everybody that helps me go fast, I sure appreciate every one of them.
Are there any more Driving for ALS shirts available that people can order off your website?
There are. It's MikeNicholsRacing.com. Thank you for the additional shameless plug. And the stories on there. My brother, unfortunately, diagnosed with a terrible disease of ALS 2011. From 2012 on and into the future, we have vowed to donate all of our shirt proceeds to looking for a cure for ALS. So appreciate that plug, something that very is near and dear to us and and hopefully we can get to the point where we make a difference in other people's lives.
Well, we're going to have you back on here in a couple of weeks because you're going to need to promote the Crawford County Speedway schedule and especially the Mike Nichols 2017 race schedule. We're going to have to take a whole show because I think you run about 4 or 5 different tracks on a weekly basis, right?
Yeah, and everything in between.
Everything in between. Mike Nichols driving the number 63 Home Pride Motorsports stock car in the Midwest for IMCA. You can catch him at Crawford County Speedway, Shelby County Speedway, McCool, and I'm missing one.
The weekly ones we ran were at Lexington Raceway in Lexington, Nebraska, and this last year we ran at a very fun track, US 30 in Columbus, Nebraska.
All right, thanks, Mike. We do appreciate your time.
All right, thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Mike. You too.
So again, Mike Nichols, driver of the 63 for Home Pride Motorsports. Something I really didn't know if I should bring it up on air, or while he was on the phone with us, but I think that he is probably the one guy that wins a lot that I don't hear a lot of snickers about cheating. I mean, he's a really nice guy. If you've never met him before, a lot of the drivers care for him. They like him. He drives really clean. I've always enjoyed that about watching his racing is that you hear drivers all the time fight about pick a line. You're all over the track. Pick a line. I don't think anybody's ever had to say that to Mike Nichols in the last 10 years.
Well, no, like he said, he grew up racing with Anderson and Brian Blessington and those guys at Harlan. You ever want a treat, drive up to Harlan on a night when those guys are going to be there and watch that stock car class. You'll see those guys, they'll go 3 wide and they'll run around the track for 15, 20 laps and never touch each other. And if they do touch each other, they each know it was an honest mistake.
Yeah.
If they hit a rut, something happened, you know.
And they'll give it back, too. If they know they got that spot unfairly, I've seen it I-80 for the stock cars, they'll give it back. They'll say, you know what, I nudged you going into that corner, my bad, I'm going to give it back to you. I'm going to go get it the fairway.
Well, they also know that, you know, they're probably going to get set back the spot. You know, if they keep it and keep running, so they go ahead and give it back.
Yeah.
Most of the racers are like that.
Maybe it's because I come from Crawford that I got to watch Mike Nichols and Flying Brian Blessington and all those guys down the Maddens and the Coles, and I know I'm mixing the hobby stocks and the stock cars together, but those are 2 of my favorite classes. I really do love watching those classes because those guys are so smooth when they're driving that it's so crazy to watch the little nuances, and they'll pick up the right momentum, and they're not the fastest class. So it's not like if you need speed to think racing is good, stock cars aren't going to do it for you. But if close racing is what you want, it's a great class for it. Because 9 nights out of 10, it's going to be a close race.
The Pro-Am class at Sunset and whatnot, you know, outside of a few years where you had some dominant drivers, was always some excellent racing. And when it switched over to I-80, it still was. I mean, it's the class they ran up at Harlan, and they ran that at Harlan Pro-Ams with the stock cars. Just now, getting the Camaros and stuff that aren't legal in the IMCA stock car class, but we're legal in the Pro-Am class. You just can't find the bodies and stuff anymore to make the cars. So the classes are morphing together, which is a good thing.
Next weekend, the plan is we're going to have Jimmy Mars on as one of our final Legends of the Dirt series. But we're having a little bit of trouble getting a hold of him, but we're going to keep trying. Don't worry. We're going to give it our best. Old college try to get him on the show for next weekend. That'll probably be our final Legends of the Dirt series for the year, unless we're able to pick up a couple more that we've been trying for the last couple of weeks. But so far, seems like that's going to be the last one. And I want to make sure and say one more time, and then Dirk, we're into the Daytona 500. We're into the pickups contest. We're into all that fun stuff.
Rock and roll on a new year.
It's going to be a whole new season and a whole new plan. Appreciate you guys joining us for this weekend's front stretch. For Dirk Houston, I'm Dan Taylor. We'll see you February 26th at Quaker Steak and Lube for the Daytona 500 viewing party. Hope you can be there. This is the front stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
The official watering hole of the front stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs is the high-octane excitement you've been looking for. It's the Metro's largest indoor track with eco-friendly, low-emission engines. You can enjoy fast-paced road course racing just across the river at Joe's Karting, located near Bass Pro in the Mid-America Center on 23rd Avenue and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Open Monday to Thursday, 2 to 10, Fridays until 11, Saturdays 11 to 11, and Sundays noon to 8.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.